The Grandview Hotel ballroom was a shimmering cage of crystal and light. Hundreds of pendants scattered brilliance across white roses and porcelain edged in gold. 200 guests, a living map of 3 decades of friendship, business, and forced family smiles, had gathered to toast Jerry and Lauren Hayes' 30 years of marriage. I occupied my usual seat at the family table, an island in a sea of champagne flutes, nursing a glass of water. My simple black dress was from an outlet store. It felt like armor. Across from me, my sister Abigail gleamed in Chanel, a diamond bracelet throwing off sparks with her every gesture. Her husband, Gregory, was already on his third scotch, his loud laugh punctuating my father's jokes. My mother held court at the table's center, a vision in champagne silk, every hair in place. Beside her, my father shone in his best suit, absorbing congratulations like sunlight. Jerry Hayes had built Hayes Manufacturing from the ground up, a $40 million industrial equipment company. It was his favorite topic, his identity, the self-made man, the American dream realized. And then there was me, Skylar Hayes. The narrative was set in stone, the daughter who couldn't hold down a job. So, what are you up to these days, Skylar? Aunt Virginia's question sliced through the murmur, her voice dripping with faux sweet concern. Figuring things out, I offered, my polite smile fixed in place. Working. Keeping busy. Where are you working? She leaned in. With Virginia, the line between interest and cruelty was permanently blurred. I heard you were at a marketing agency? Or was it a consulting firm? That was 2 years ago, Abigail supplied, her tone helpful as a scalpel. She's had at least 3 jobs since then. Maybe 4. I've lost count. 6 to be precise, Gregory added, swirling his amber drink. I keep a list. It's almost impressive. Not everyone can fail that many times in such a short period. A wave of stiff, polite laughter rippled around the table. Everyone understood the joke. Everyone pretended not to. Gregory, my mother chided softly, her own smile never wavering. Skylar is just finding herself. For 3 years now, Abigail noted. By 32, most people have it figured out. You explore in your 20s. You choose in your 30s. Some talents reveal themselves later, my father said, though the words rang hollow, betrayed by the disbelief in his voice. Skylar has always been different. He didn't need to finish the thought. Less driven than Abigail. Less focused. Less successful. The unspoken word failure hung in the air, heavier than the chandeliers. I just believe it's important to find the right fit, I said, my voice barely above a murmur. The right fit, Abigail echoed, mockery giving the words a sharp edge. Skylar, you've tried marketing, consulting, sales, project management, operations. What was the last one? Some startup that fell apart in 6 months. It didn't fall apart, I corrected. It was acquired. What's the difference? Gregory said with a dismissive wave. The point is, you're 32 with no career trajectory, no savings, no property. Nothing to show for over a decade of work. Unlike Abigail, Aunt Virginia chimed in, feeding the beast. Made partner at her law firm at 30. Youngest in the firm's history. Abigail offered a modest, practiced smile, but her eyes glittered with naked triumph. She thrived on these comparisons, on the reaffirmation of her place at the top of our family's hierarchy. Abigail has always been exceptional, my father agreed, his chest swelling with pride. Top of her class at Harvard Law, made partner record fast, married a successful surgeon. He nodded approvingly at Gregory. Built a life we can be proud of. The subtext was a shout in the quiet room. She built a life to be proud of. I did not. I was the contrast, the cautionary tale, the proof of their superior choices. I took another sip of water, the ice cubes clinking a solitary sound in the crowded, glittering noise. The audience for our little ritual was growing. My cousin Dennis, Uncle Jacob, and a cluster of my father's business partners and their families drifted closer, drawn to the familiar spectacle. They settled into surrounding chairs, their expressions a mix of polite curiosity and subtle relish. They'd come to watch the latest chapter in the ongoing saga of Skylar Hayes, the family's perennial underachiever. So, what's the flavor of the month this time? Uncle Jacob boomed, not unkindly, but with the assurance of someone asking a predictable question. "What's your job now, Skylar?" "I'm in corporate management," I replied, my voice level and calm. Abigail's laugh cut through the air, a sharp, brittle sound like crystal shattering. "Corporate management? Seriously? That's so wonderfully vague. What does that even mean?" "I manage corporate operations and strategy," I said. "At what company?" my father asked, his tone layered with open skepticism. "Another startup that'll collapse in 6 months?" "Actually," I said, letting the word hang for a beat. "I've been at the same company for 5 years." A sudden, dense quiet descended on our corner of the table. Abigail's perfectly curated smile slipped a fraction. My mother's face lit with fragile hope. "5 years?" Mom breathed. "Skylar, why didn't you tell us?" "That's wonderful." "What company?" "You never asked," I said simply. "But yes, 5 years." Gregory seized on the first perceived weakness. "In the same position?" "So no promotion, no growth. 5 years sitting still." "The role has evolved," I clarified. "But yes, same title, same company." "And what?" Abigail demanded, her voice taking on the precise, penetrating tone of a courtroom interrogator. "Is your title?" Her lawyer's instincts were twitching, sensing a discrepancy in the testimony. "CEO," I said calmly. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum, thick and ringing, swallowing the ambient noise of the party. "CEO," my father slowly repeated, the 2 letters sounding foreign on his tongue. "You're claiming you're a chief executive officer?" "I'm not claiming," I said. "I have been. For 5 years." "CEO of what?" Abigail's cross-examination began in earnest. "Some tiny startup?" "3 people working out of a garage." "Something like that," I conceded with a small shrug. "Though we moved out of the garage around year 2. Gregory barked a laugh, the sound rich with condescension. "So you're just running a small business?" "That's cute, Skylar. But let's be honest, calling yourself CEO of a 10-person company is a bit pretentious." "It's a bit more than 10, I said. "How many employees?" Uncle Jacob interjected. Despite the prevailing skepticism, a note of genuine business interest had entered his voice. "4,236 as of last Friday," I answered. I took a small sip of water. "Though we're hiring. Should be over 4,500 by the end of the quarter." The new silence was profound, weighted with the shock of the number. It was the sound of a worldview straining. "4,000 employees," my father said, his voice flattened into a monotone by disbelief. "You're telling me you run a company with 4,000 employees?" "I'm telling you I run a company that employs over 4,000 people across 11 countries," I corrected gently. "But the numbers aren't the main thing. It's what we do." "And what is that?" Aunt Virginia asked, her earlier smirk replaced by confusion. "We're an industrial holding company," I explained, my tone matter of fact. "We buy manufacturing firms, modernize their processes, increase efficiency, and scale them globally. We specialize in traditional manufacturing sectors that are struggling with digital transformation." I watched as the words landed, each one dismantling their carefully constructed narrative of me, brick by brick. Abigail was already a blur of motion, her manicured fingers flying across her phone screen. "What's the company called?" she demanded, her voice tight. "Aeneas Core Industries," I said. I observed the transformation in real time. The color seeped from her face, leaving a marble pallor. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, darted back and forth as she scrolled, her breath coming in shallow hits. The polished facade of the high-powered attorney completely dissolved. This can't be," she whispered, the words a thin vapor of sound. "What is it?" Gregory wrested the phone from her grasp. His reaction was less controlled, more visceral. "Hell," he breathed out, the expletive sharp and involuntary. "Hell, Gregory," my mother chided, her own shock lending a strident edge to her voice. "Watch your language." "Aeneas Core Industries," Gregory read aloud, his voice slow and deliberate as if translating a difficult text. "Annual revenue $2.7 billion. Operates in 11 countries. Portfolio of 43 manufacturing companies. Founded 5 years ago. Founder and CEO. Skylar Hayes." His head snapped up, his eyes searching my face for a sign of a joke. "This is you." "That's me," I confirmed. "You own a $3 billion company." Abigail's voice wasn't her own. It was a cracked imitation. "The company is valued at $3.2 billion on the latest estimates," I clarified, my tone even, as if discussing the weather. "Approximately, anyway. The valuation is pre-IPO. We're planning to go public next year. Revenue is currently $2.7 billion annually. Should be closer to 3 by year-end." My father looked as though the floor had vanished beneath him. He gripped the table's edge, his knuckles white. "Skylar, this simply can't be." "It's very real," I said. I retrieved my own phone, tapped it open to my email, and slid it down the polished tabletop. It came to a stop before him. "That's the agenda for last week's board meeting. You'll see I'm listed as the chair." Father picked up the device with trembling hands. My mother leaned into his space, her champagne silk rustling. I watched, a quiet spectator, as their expressions underwent a seismic shift from disbelief to confusion to dawning, staggering comprehension as they scrolled through board reports, staggering financial projections, and lists of companies targeted for strategic acquisition. "You bought Hayes Manufacturing," my father whispered. It wasn't a question. "A month ago," I nodded. "Though you would have known if you'd read the final paperwork. The acquiring entity was clearly listed as Aeneas Core Industries." "I'm surprised your lawyer didn't emphasize it." "He did," my father admitted, his voice hollow. "He said Aeneas Core was a solid company, had a good reputation, that the offer was more than fair. He recommended I accept." It was fair, I agreed. $42 million. A 15% premium over market value. The transition terms for you and your team were very generous. "You bought Dad's company?" Abigail said, the sentence a staccato burst of stunned incredulity. "The one who can't hold a job?" "I held a job just fine," I replied, a flicker of steel finally entering my calm tone. "I've been the CEO of Aeneas Core for 5 years. I seeded it with the money from Grandma Hayes' trust. The very $2 million you all were certain I would squander. You turned $2 million into a $3 billion company," Uncle Jacob stated. All trace of skepticism had vanished, replaced by the focused curiosity of a seasoned businessman. "Not all at once," I said. "The first acquisition was a small, struggling machine shop in Pennsylvania. I paid $800,000 for it. Then I lived there for 4 months, learning every bolt, every process, every inefficiency. I modernized their systems, brought in lean management, renegotiated their supplier contracts. Tripled its revenue within a year." "You lived in Pennsylvania?" my mother asked, her mind seemingly snagging on the most human detail amidst the financial enormity. "When you told us you were traveling for work?" "I was traveling for work," I answered. "For the first 3 years, I embedded myself in or near every company we acquired. I needed to understand manufacturing from the ground up, from the shop floor to the supply chain. You can't responsibly run 43 manufacturing companies if you don't fundamentally understand how manufacturing works." "The job changes," my father said slowly. A painful, dawning realization illuminating his eyes. The pieces were clicking into a picture he had never imagined. "Every time you thought I was quitting another job, I finished for him, my gaze holding his. I was acquiring another company. I wasn't job hopping. I was building a portfolio. But you never asked for details. You just assumed, every single time, that I had failed." Abigail's shock was receding, burned away by a professional urgency. The lawyer in her was back online, parsing data, building a new case file on the person she thought she knew. "The list of acquisitions," she said, her eyes scanning her phone. "Dern Tool and Die. Morrison Industrial. Blackstone Manufacturing. These aren't garage operations. These are substantial, established companies. Some have been around for decades." "We finalized the Severn Gears acquisition for the Dern portfolio," I confirmed. "Our typical targets are exactly that, family-run manufacturing firms with deep histories. They're facing generational succession issues or are drowning in the wave of digital transformation. We provide an exit, then inject capital and expertise. We modernize, integrate, and scale. It's a solid business model." "A $3 billion business model," Gregory muttered, still hypnotized by the glowing screen in his hand, the figures on it rewriting his entire reality. Closer to 4 billion now, I said. That valuation is a few months old. We're having a very strong year. My father was still scrolling through my emails, a journey taking him from shock, through bewildered confusion, and landing somewhere in the neighborhood of awe. You have a meeting scheduled with the Secretary of Commerce, he whispered, as if saying it too loudly might make it disappear. Next month, I nodded. They're formulating new manufacturing policy. Aeneas Corp employs thousands in sectors directly impacted by trade and industrial policy. It's my job to ensure our voice is heard. Meeting with cabinet-level officials comes with the territory at the scale. Hayes Manufacturing, he said, the name a soft prayer on his lips. He zoomed in on the screen. Here, in the integration notes, it says you're planning to invest $12 million in immediate modernization and increase the workforce by 40%. That's the approved plan, I said. Your company, the company you built, has excellent fundamentals, Dad. Loyal clients, a quality product, dedicated employees. But the machinery is 2 generations behind, the supply chain is a tangled mess, and your IT system is practically a museum piece. We're going to fix all of that. You're going to fix my company? The question was layered with a lifetime of pride and sudden, startling vulnerability. It's not your company anymore, I reminded him gently. You sold it. To Aeneas Corp. But yes, we will modernize it. It's what we do. I let a beat of silence pass, the hum of the distant party filling the space. And, Dad, I added, you're retained as a senior consultant for 2 years. The contract is for $400,000 annually. What? It's in the agreement you signed, I said. Your role is to ensure a smooth transition, introduce us to key client relationships, and transfer the institutional knowledge that isn't written down anywhere. It's a good deal. $400,000 a year, my mother repeated, the number sounding both astronomical and mundane. For consulting. It's the market rate for an executive with Dad's depth of experience and network, I explained. Actually, it's slightly above market. I wanted to be generous. Generous, my father echoed, the word seeming to hold a new and complex meaning. Abigail, meanwhile, had unearthed another piece of the puzzle. It says here you were named to last year's Fortune 40 Under 40 list. Yes, I said. That was a nice recognition. Nice, she repeated, her voice straining. You make the Fortune list and you call it nice? What would you like me to call it? I asked, my calm unwavering. It was positive exposure. It's good for business, helps with recruiting. Opens doors for partnerships. But at the end of the day, it's just a list. Just a list, Gregory snorted, the sound edged with something like hysterical disbelief. Most people would have that thing framed. Plaster it on their wall. Bring it up at every opportunity. I don't have walls in my office, I replied. We use an open floor plan. It fosters better collaboration. Aunt Virginia, who had been a silent, wide-eyed observer throughout the entire upheaval, finally found her voice. Skylar, all this time. We thought you were struggling, barely getting by. And you were a billionaire. I'm not a billionaire, I corrected, my tone factual. I own approximately 70% of Aeneas Corp. On paper, based on the last valuation, that's about $2.2 billion. But it's equity. It's not cash. It's not liquid. My actual net worth in accessible, liquid assets is closer to $200 million. Only $200 million, Uncle Jacob said, his dry delivery barely concealing a profound astonishment. It's enough, I said with a small, final shrug. But why? My mother's question was a fracture in the quiet, her voice splintering with emotion. Why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were failing all this time? I held her gaze, allowing the weight of the years to settle between us. I tried to tell you, Mom. 5 years ago, when I incorporated Aeneas Corp, I sat at your kitchen table and told you I was starting an industrial holding company. Do you remember what you said? My mother's eyes fluttered shut as if to block out the memory. She didn't need to speak. The recollection was etched in the lines of her face. You said I was wasting Grandma's money on a silly fantasy, I continued, my voice devoid of accusation, simply stating a historical fact. Dad, you suggested I look into a franchise instead, something with a manual, something safe and proven. And Abigail, I said, turning slightly toward my sister, you gave me 12 months. You said I'd be bankrupt within a year. We were trying to protect you, my father offered, but the defense sounded feeble, even to him. You were trying to control me, I corrected softly. And when I chose a path you didn't understand or approve of, you collectively decided I had failed. Every time I closed an acquisition, every time I relocated to some factory town, every sleepless night I spent on a production floor learning how a CNC lathe actually works, to all of you, that was just Skylar flaking out on another job. You never saw the through line. You never wanted to. We didn't know, Abigail said, the protest quiet, hollow. You didn't ask, I replied. And you didn't ask because you didn't want to know. It was easier. It was easier to have the comfortable story of the disappointing daughter. It was easier to hold me up as the contrast to perfect Abigail. It was easier for everyone to feel superior. The words landed with a tangible, physical weight, like stones dropped onto the fine table linen. That's not fair, Abigail protested, but the words had no spine, no conviction. Isn't it? I asked, my gaze sweeping the table. For 5 years, at every holiday, every birthday, every dinner like this one, the script has been the same. The jokes about my instability. The little digs about my lack of direction. I became your living, breathing cautionary tale. And I allowed it. Because if I had corrected you, if I had said, actually, I just bought a company, it would have sounded like desperate, pathetic bragging. And I don't brag. But you're a billionaire, Gregory interjected, still mentally stuck on the astronomical figures, as if they were the only relevant truth. You own a company worth billions. The company is valued in the billions, I repeated, a note of weariness finally creeping in. I am a person who built a business. The business is valuable. The number on a speculative report doesn't change who I am in this chair. My father, still navigating the digital evidence on my phone, let out a soft, choked sound. You have an offer here. From Goldman Sachs. They're proposing to lead your IPO. They're valuing Aeneas Core at $12 billion now. 14 if you wait until next year. Yes, I confirmed. Going public is the next logical step. We're in advanced planning stages. 14 billion, he breathed. The number a universe away from the 40 million he'd spent a lifetime building. Again, Dad, I said, leaning forward slightly. That's a valuation. It's not a suitcase of cash. It's theoretical, based on future potential. What that potential means is what matters. It means Aeneas Core can access the capital to acquire a dozen more companies like yours. It means we can save thousands more jobs that would otherwise vanish. It means we can pull entire segments of American manufacturing into the 21st century, not as relics, but as competitors. That's the point. The number is just a means to that end. You're saving jobs, Uncle Jacob said, the realization dawning not just as a financial insight, but a human one. Businesses like Hayes Manufacturing, a lot of them would just shutter without something like this. The owners would retire, and that would be it. Many would, yes, I agreed. The entire sector is in a generational transition. Founders are ready to step down, but their kids went to business school and want to work in tech or finance. The alternative is often a private equity firm that'll buy it, sell off the assets, and milk the client list until it's dry. Our model is different. We buy, we invest, we modernize, and we grow. It's a win-win. The sellers get a fair, often life-changing exit. The employees keep their jobs, usually with better pay and benefits as we streamline. And we build something sustainable and scalable. That's almost noble, he marveled, shaking his head slightly. It's sound business strategy, I corrected gently. Nobility isn't a factor in the spreadsheet. But the positive side effects are real, and yes, I'm proud of them. I'm proud of what we've built. Abigail, however, had cycled past shock and was now solidly in the white-hot phase of anger. It was a cleaner, more familiar emotion for her. All these years, she hissed, the words tight. Every family dinner where we talked down to you. Where Dad went on about you needing to find a real path. Where Gregory and I, in our infinite generosity, gave you those gift cards to help you out, and you were sitting on $1 billion empire. I never asked for your pity, I stated, my voice cool and level. I never asked for help. I never once complained about my situation. You decided I was a charity case. You decided I needed rescuing. And then you gave yourselves a quiet round of applause for being so magnanimous. The gift cards, Gregory echoed, a strange, rueful smile twisting his lips. The $500 Visa cards. Every Christmas. Just a little something to tide you over. I donated them in full to the National Manufacturing Worker Assistance Coalition, I answered. It seemed a more appropriate use of the funds. He barked a short, sharp laugh. Of course you did. Of course. This is insane, Abigail declared, pushing back from the table so abruptly her chair screeched. This is completely insane. You let us do all that. You made us look like fools. No, I replied, not moving an inch from my own seat. My calm was a stark contrast to her turbulence. You looked at the scant information you bothered to collect and made assumptions. I simply didn't intervene to correct them. It's the same thing. It is categorically not the same thing, I said, my patience a thin, steady line. I did not lie. I did not construct a false persona of poverty. I told you I worked in corporate management. I said I was very busy. I mentioned I traveled frequently for work. Every statement was true. You were the ones who filled in the gaps with a narrative that was convenient for you. One that made you feel secure and superior. A narrative you actively supported by never saying a word. She fired back, her finger jabbing the air for emphasis. Why should I have? The question hung, simple and devastating. So your behavior toward me would change? So instead of poor, aimless Skylar, I could become successful, impressive Skylar, a new trophy for you to boast about to your colleagues? So you could swap out your embarrassing sister for a prestigious one? Tell me, what part of that is about actually knowing me? That's not, she started, but the protest died in her throat. That's exactly it, I cut in, my gaze unwavering. And to be brutally honest, I preferred the version of you who believed I was struggling. That version, however condescending, was at least operating on what she believed was truth. She was authentic in her petty superiority. Now I get to watch the historical revisionism in real time. We always knew Skylar was special. We always supported her unconventional dreams. We're just so proud of her success. I can already hear the dinner party lines being rehearsed. The silence that followed was thick with the uncomfortable truth of my prediction. It hung in the air between us, undeniable. My father's hands, which had been gripping the edge of the table, slowly relaxed. He picked up my phone with a newfound reverence and carefully, deliberately, set it down in front of me, as if returning a sacred artifact. Skylar, he began, his voice gravelly with emotion. I owe you an apology. A profound and massive one. For 5 years, I treated you like a disappointment. I made you the punchline. I belittled your choices. And all the while, you were quietly building an empire on a scale I literally cannot fathom. Apology accepted, I said, the words quiet but clear. He searched my face, his own etched with a raw hope that looked foreign on him. Can you forgive me? I didn't answer immediately. I let the question sit in the space between us, heavy with the weight of years of condescension and missed connections. I don't know, Dad, I said finally, honest to a fault. The question isn't really about my forgiveness. It's about whether you can actually change. Can you stop measuring a person's worth by the yardstick of a corner office, a public title, a certain kind of prestige? Can you learn to see the value in a path that doesn't mirror your own, that might even look messy from the outside? He swallowed, the motion visible in his throat. I can try. Maybe that's enough, I replied. Maybe. Hayes Manufacturing, he said suddenly, the name a bridge back to familiar ground. When you bought it, the easy money would have been to shut it down, auction off the machinery, sell the property. A quick, clean profit. Like the private equity vultures do. I agreed without hesitation. It would have been profitable in the short term. But Aeneas Core doesn't operate that way. We build. We don't strip. The $12 million in capital investment, the pledge to grow the workforce, it's not a PR line. It's the operational blueprint. It's all real, he asked, needing the confirmation one more time. Very real, I confirmed. We've already contracted for new CNC machine centers. We're ripping out the entire legacy IT system next quarter. We have lean manufacturing specialists scheduled to do on-site workshops with the management team. The goal is to make it more efficient, more competitive, and yes, more profitable. And the 40% headcount increase is a 3-year target we're fully budgeted to meet. You're going to save my company, he said, and his voice didn't just tremble, it broke. It's not your company anymore, I reminded him, my tone softening. You made the choice to sell. But yes, we are going to make it thrive. It's what we do. It's the only thing we do. My mother, who had been a silent witness to this collision of worlds, finally spoke. Her voice was thin, bewildered. 30 years. We're here to celebrate 30 years of building a life together. And on this night, we discover our daughter has built something bigger than all of it. More successful than we ever imagined. More successful, it seems, than all of us combined. Success isn't a competition, Mom, I said. Isn't it? She asked, a genuine, painful curiosity in her eyes. Abigail is a partner at a white shoe law firm. Your father built a $40 million business from nothing. I had a 20-year career advising Fortune 500 companies. We thought we were the picture of success. That we had accomplished what we set out to do. And you did, I said, meaning it. You built stable, respected careers. You provided a wonderful life for your family. You created value and expertise in your chosen fields. Those are legitimate achievements. They matter. But you built a billion-dollar empire, Abigail stated, as if correcting a factual error. 3 billion, Gregory supplied automatically, still in a daze. I built a company, I said, steering the focus back to the work. A company that, through a combination of strategy and circumstance, is now valued highly. But the valuation is not the achievement. The achievement is the 4,000 people who have good jobs. It's the 43 companies that had one foot in the grave and are now growing. It's the manufacturing sectors we're helping to modernize so they don't get left behind. That's what matters. The money is just the fuel for that engine. You really, truly believe that, don't you? Uncle Jacob remarked, studying me not with business acumen now, but with something closer to awe. I do, I confirmed without a shred of doubt. The capital is a byproduct. An incredibly useful, powerful byproduct. It allows me to acquire more companies, protect more jobs, and do more of the work. But it is not, and never has been, the point. Then what is the point? My father asked, leaning forward, truly listening for perhaps the first time. To build something that matters, I answered simply. To create value that outlasts the next quarterly report. To help entire industries adapt and evolve instead of withering and dying. It's not a complicated philosophy. My phone vibrated against the linen tablecloth, a soft, insistent hum. I glanced at the screen. A message from my CFO. Board meeting moved to Tuesday. Office of the Commerce Secretary confirmed for next month. And congratulations, you're officially on the Forbes billionaires list as of today. Article out tomorrow. I typed a quick reply. Thanks. See you Tuesday. When I looked up, the entire table was fixed on me, a collective audience holding its breath. Forbes? Abigail asked, her lawyer's eye missing nothing. Just work, I said, slipping the phone back into my clutch. The Forbes billionaires list, Gregory said, his voice hushed. He'd somehow craned to read the preview. That's not just work, Skylar. That's international recognition. That's a different league. It's a list, I repeated, a faint thread of weariness finally audible. A famous one. It will be useful for Aeneas Corp's public profile ahead of the IPO. But at its core, it's still just a compilation of names and estimated net worths. Most people, Aunt Virginia said, her tone a blend of awe and reproach, would throw a party for making that list. They'd call everyone they know. I'll celebrate closing the acquisition of the Portland valve manufacturer next week, I said. That's worth a toast. It secures 300 skilled jobs that were on the chopping block. That's a tangible result. That's a victory. My father let out a short, breathy laugh, a sound composed equally of amazement and utter disbelief. You are extraordinary, Skylar. Utterly extraordinary. And I was too blind, too stubborn to see it. You saw what you were conditioned to see, I said, not unkindly. What fit the comfortable narrative? What reinforced your own worldview of what success should look like? I see that now, he admitted, the words seeming to cost him something. I don't like what it says about me, but I see it. Can we start over? My mother asked, her eyes pleading. Truly start over? Can we get to know the real you? Not the fictional daughter who's always struggling, but the woman who actually built this incredible thing. I let my gaze travel around the circle of faces, the fragile hope etched on my parents, the complex stew of awe and bitter chagrin on Abigail's, the shell-shocked astonishment on Gregory's, the general stupor of the extended family. It was a tableau of a universe recalibrating. I don't know, I said, the honesty stark and uncompromising. The idea of starting over sounds good. In theory. But for it to be real, it would require you to fundamentally change how you assess value. Not just in business, but in people. You'd have to unlearn a lifetime of equating prestige with worth and noise with achievement. I'm not sure that's possible. I'm not sure any of us can truly shed skin that thick. Give us a chance to try, my father implored, his hand finding my mother's. Maybe, I conceded. But not tonight. Tonight is your anniversary. 30 years of partnership. That legacy deserves its own spotlight. Without my company, or my net worth, or any of this, I gestured vaguely at the charged air between us, overshadowing it. I think that ship has sailed, my mother said, offering a weak, watery smile. Perhaps I agreed. But the night isn't over. We can try to steer it back. So, tell me. I leaned forward slightly, deliberately shifting the energy. What's your favorite memory from these 30 years? One thing. Something that has nothing to do with work or success or money. Just a moment where you were simply together. They looked at each other, and for the first time that evening, the performance fell completely away. The defensiveness, the pride, the social posturing dissolved. What remained was raw and real. My mother reached for my father's hand, her fingers lacing through his. Our first apartment, my father said, his voice softening with the memory. A 600-square-foot box. We had a mattress on the floor, a second-hand sofa, and a single pot for pasta. But it was ours. We were so poor, my mother added, a genuine, nostalgic smile touching her lips. We counted every penny. But we were so happy. It was just us. That, I said, my own voice gentle, is worth celebrating. That's what tonight should be about. Not my company. Not your company. Not any balance sheet. Just the 30 years you've spent building a life together from a mattress on the floor up. You're right, my father said, squeezing my mother's hand, his eyes shining with a different kind of pride now. Absolutely right. The final hour of the celebration passed in a lower key. The champagne still flowed, the music still played, but the atmosphere around our table had been fundamentally altered. Glances still came my way, but they were no longer laced with pity or mild contempt. Now, they held bewilderment, sharp curiosity, and the dazed look of people recalculating every prior assumption. They made a visible effort, bless them, to redirect the conversation back to my parents, to old stories, to shared history, but my presence had become a gravitational force, bending the space around it. As the last of the guests collected their coats and the waitstaff began clearing the tables, Abigail intercepted me near a towering floral arrangement. The background noise of the dying party created a semi-private bubble. I've been awful to you, she stated, her trademark bluntness stripped of its usual condescension. It was just a flat, ugly fact. For years. I used you as a benchmark to make myself feel accomplished. To feel superior. And the entire time, you were building something I genuinely can't comprehend. Yes, I agreed. There was no point in softening it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she continued, holding up a hand as if to stop me from offering it. That would be cheap. I just need you to know that I see it now. I see the scale of what you've done. It's incredible. Thank you, I said. It wasn't acceptance, just acknowledgement. Can we talk? She asked, the vulnerability in the question so unfamiliar it sounded awkward on her tongue. I mean, really talk. Not as competitors, not as whatever we've been. I want to understand your business. Your life. Everything I've missed. I studied her face, looking for the ghost of the old rivalry, the habitual need to one-up. It was dormant, perhaps, but I knew it wasn't extinct. Maybe, I said. When you're ready to listen without making comparisons, without turning it into a contest, without using my story as a yardstick to measure your own. She took a slow breath, her shoulders dropping slightly. I can try. Then maybe, I agreed, we can talk. Outside the hotel, the night air was cool and sharp. My phone, silenced but not still, pulsed like a frantic heartbeat in my hand. The Forbes leak had triggered the predictable deluge. My PR director's messages stacked up, a log of mounting media frenzy. The board chair had texted 3 times, wanting to get ahead of the narrative. The noise of the outside world was rushing in, demanding a response. But as my car pulled away from the glittering facade of the Grandview, I didn't see the headlines. I saw my father's trembling hands on my phone, my mother's shattered expression, the stunned silence that had been louder than any toast. The recalibration. That dizzying, instantaneous shift from a lifetime of gentle pity to staggering awe. The question hung with me, more persistent than any notification. Would they ever truly see me? Or would they simply exchange one convenient fiction for another, erasing the struggling Skylar and installing billionaire Skylar in her place, a new trophy for the family mantle, never bothering to understand the woman who existed in the messy, determined, silent space between those 2 labels? Time, I supposed, would tell. They would have to decide what they wanted more, a new symbol to boast about or a real person to know. Either way, my work remained. The world beyond this personal upheaval hadn't paused. There were companies to evaluate for acquisition, jobs hanging in the balance, waiting to be saved or lost. An empire, not of glittering trophies, but of steel, sweat, and purpose, that needed building. And I would continue to build it, with their approval or without it.